All right. Good evening, everybody. This is Nate G, along with Dr. Doug Lisle. Dr. Lisle, how are you doing today?
Good. Good to be here.
Excellent. Well, today we are titling the show Overcoming Height, Weight, and Financial Differences While Dating. And it comes from a couple of questions that we got over the last few weeks, and we are going to be going over them, and then we'll be going over to the rest of them. So the first question is about income. The second question is about girls who are overweight, and then girls who are, and then about height differences. We have a guy who is fairly short and is just wanting to know what to do about it. So without any further ado, Dr. Lisle, you ready for this?
Sure, why not? Let's see what we got.
All right, let's do what we got. Okay. Dear Dr. Lisle, when you discussed raising children, you said that the best way to check someone's income is to look at their identical twins' income, which seems to me to imply that income is genetically based. Does this then say that people who are poor just have a personality that lends them staying poor? I'm asking because this would have large repercussions on the policies surrounding poverty-based solutions.
Certainly, yeah. If there's one big lie in this culture, and of course there are many, but I have some friend that always has like the three biggest lies, and they're all very dirty. I can't remember what they are, but I'm sure he would remind me.
Well, when you say that, it's almost like you're going to tell us that Santa Claus does not exist.
Not quite. Of course, poverty is genetically based. Now that wasn't true, when you had people in slavery and you have horrendous situations where there's massive differences in different parts of the country, for example, with respect to resources. So historically, genes and income or financial situations have not been as well correlated as they are today. Today, the playing field is much easier, and so it seems, of course, and there are differences in situations, certainly. However, let's suppose that you come from a very well-to-do family, but you are in fact 90 IQ, which would put you at about the 35th percentile. And your dad, a long time ago, 80 years ago, he was a Harvard man, and 80 years ago he could have gotten you into Harvard. Well, he cannot get you into Harvard. He can't even get you into Cal State Long Beach today. And that you're going to have a job with your name on your shirt. That's how this is going to go down. So today's circumstances of birth, et cetera, don't have nearly as much to do with where people wind up. The market is much more fluid and much more fitness and essentially cost-benefit based than it is nepotism and so on and so forth. So now, that doesn't mean that it's an even playing field. Obviously, if you come from the ghetto and you can't, your mom is working really hard and your dad isn't there, and there's gunshots, and there's a lot of things that could get in your way. So we're not going to say that income is entirely genetic. Only that the genes with respectable personality factors and IQ are going to have an enormous impact or a huge say in people's income. So, yes, so this does have huge repercussions for policies, but it turns out that the politicians either, number one, do not know the facts about this, or number two, they have their heads in the sand, or actually number three is they don't dare say it. And, when I've seen news shows over and over again, it is assumed that the problem with poverty is education. The problem with poverty is not education, or at least not with respect to the education that any of these people are talking about. You do not educate people out of poverty with a standard bogus education that we feed people in the United States. The way out of poverty is for people to learn skills and not to be wasting valuable time between their ages of 12 and 18 when they're going to be when they are effectively wards of the state for several hours a day. They could be actually getting an education that might be useful with respect to trading in the world and earning $20 an hour instead of being a minimum wage employee, maybe. So, but the system cannot tolerate this politically. This is an idea with no political future. because people cannot stand to say that there is genetic differences that are going to determine income, and there's not a damn thing that any policy is going to do about this. So because they cannot stand to face this truth, they will not face this truth. And because they will not face this truth, we're going to get the same one-size-fits-all bogus education that is nothing more, incidentally, than a fitness indicator to look towards college, which is mostly a fitness indicator to look towards, who's going to hire whom to do what. And so that's what's going to take place. So anyway, yes, it does have huge repercussions. It would expect that most of the policies that keep their heads in the sand with respect to these issues will continue to fail the very people that they are afraid to offend. Okay, and this is a tragedy, but nobody has any guts, and so nobody's going to do anything about it. There.
Unfortunate.
On that cheerful note, we'll go on to the next one.
Yeah. All right. Well, so you're saying it's mostly due to IQ versus and so I mean conscience. I've read a book.
IQ and conscience.
Oh.
What's that? You read what book?
I've read the Willpower book by Roy Baumeister, and they were basically saying that conscientiousness, or essentially ability to delay instant gratification, was kind of one of the bigger predictors of long-term success.
Yeah, it's a joke. Yeah, Baumeister's an academic, and he wouldn't dare tell the truth either. So no, he can't afford to do that. He lives in an academic liberal land, and you don't dare speak the truth there. So even if he knows the truth, which I don't know if he does. No, IQ dominates the show, folks, obviously. Okay? Who can be a doctor? Someone with a top 2 percentile IQ. Who can be a decent lawyer? Someone with a top 2% IQ. Who can be an okay lawyer? Somebody with a top 10% IQ. Who can be an okay doctor? There isn't anybody that's allowed to be called doctor unless they've got a 98th percentile IQ, not a medical doctor, okay? A lot of doctors of psychology are walking around. A lot of
I was just going to ask you about psychology.
But the point is that if you're going to be an electrical engineer, you better have a 98th plus percentile IQ, or you're not going to be able to get through class. And so this is just how it is. And so of course, brains are. So it isn't that the top people are the only people that are worth anything. All up and down the scale. You can't have somebody teaching school at a high school, an American high school, that's a 40th percentile brain. How are they possibly going to do this? What could they teach? I don't know, phys ed possibly. I'm not sure what they could do. They could teach phys ed, and I've had some phys ed teachers that didn't have a lot of brains, so they could do that. But honest to goodness, who is going to teach an American history class to a bunch of 10th graders? When half of those 10th graders are above the mean, if that teacher's at the 30th percentile for brains, they're going to look like an idiot and get slaughtered in there. There's no way they can do it. So brains are going to dictate a great deal of where it is that people are going to wind up in the socioeconomic strata, and that's just how it is. Brains are now more valuable, incidentally, than ever. This is a fabulous thing because it means that the economic problem of essentially rearranging atoms in ways that are going to be more advantageous for human satisfaction, that requires intelligence to do those rearrangements. This has been a march of the last 200 years about how essentially intelligence is replacing muscles. And so essentially you're watching a major drift of economic power away from big, strong men to anybody with a brain, male or female. And so this is actually a good thing as we have robots do the heavy lifting and the human brains try to figure out what should be lifted and when. And so this is going to continue on. This is why, for example, it doesn't matter how much they try to lean the situation to try to help people that are low on the scale, they wind up drifting further and further behind, and that's because it isn't that their absolute economic circumstances are becoming worse. Their relative economic circumstances are becoming worse because brains become increasingly valuable, and in these situations, the difference between those that have more brains and those who have very few brains winds up continuing to widen in terms of economic advantage. All right.
Okay.
Let's move on
and
go on to something else.
Okay. And overcoming this while dating is kind of what you said before, is you kind of get what you get. And if you're dating in this market with, whatever your IQ is or whatever your financial situation is, that is kind of, you can trade for what you can trade for, and there's not really much to do about it.
Well, I would say this. In other words, I'm not a genetic determinist in the sense that no matter where it is that you are on any scale, you can sure as hell work hard and put yourself in better circumstances, and you can learn more skills, et cetera, et cetera. And just because you're smart doesn't mean anybody's going to hand you a check. So there's still a lot of hustle to do. It's just that from a societal policy standpoint, if we ignore that the genes are the largest variance in the equation, we're completely wasting society's resources in efforts to help people that are struggling.
Okay.
All right.
Next question.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is from a lady, our lady listener. If Dr. Lisle, if girls are too heavy and they truly cannot meet men because their rating is artificially low, why is it that I see fat girls meeting Mr. Right? I have one obese friend in particular that just married Mr. Right, and I see a lot of fat people in general who marry.
Well, this is great. All right, so let's look at the situation. Of course, you see overweight people that marry, and you will see overweight girls that meet Mr. Right, and so what you're looking at is essentially that the marketplace is going to be what we call a scramble. And this is the way this species works. It's a scramble competition. It's not a hierarchy. We don't line up the top guy with the top girl, the second guy with the second girl, etc. That's not how it works. It's all a big scramble competition, and there's plenty of, well, there's not enough of this in my judgment, but there's a certain degree of subjectivity in everybody's rating system and in everybody's personal calibration. So, of course, once in a while, you're going to find things that don't make sense to you. You're going to think, wait a second, what's he seeing over there? He could do better in my judgment. But what you don't realize is that there may be a number of reasons why that particular individual meets minimum threshold for this guy. And so this is kind of like shopping for a car, in that if you there's maybe a certain number of features, and you may really like something about a Pontiac Firebird, but there may be something about it that that's completely, or like a Mustang, like it looks really cool and you really like it, but you know what? It really doesn't do what you need it to do because you're a painter, and what you really need is a pickup truck. And so often, there are always trade-offs in these situations. So Mr. Right, from your eyes, marries this overweight lady, and you're thinking, wait a second, he could have done so much better with respect to that particular parameter. But it turns out that she managed to meet minimum criteria and on all dimensions. And really what qualifying is in a romance is to meet minimum criteria across all of the dimensions that matter, which are looks, brains, and personality. And so just because a person's overweight doesn't mean that they're not going to meet some person's minimum parameters that meets criteria for them. So it's possible, it's just a whole lot less likely. And that's good news for anybody that is overweight, because you need to know that your competitors will not get off their rear ends. They will not learn what it is to do this right. They won't get it done, and therefore, essentially, you can vault yourself quite above your competition by actually going to the effort to get fit. Getting fit is no trivial trick. It requires a lot of knowledge, and requires some skills, and it also requires a lot of determination. But if you do that, you put yourself in a much more competitive position in the modern environment than you ever would have. So at this point, somebody who is a 6 can vault themselves up to probably a 7.5 just by being in good condition. All right. Good enough?
Yeah, fantastic.
Let's move on.
All right. Next question we have. Dear Dr. Lisle, I'm a smart guy, funny, in shape, I have a really good job. Would the fact that I'm 5'5" have anything to do with why I can't seem to get a date, but every girl I meet would like to be my friend? I know someone else with this same problem. He's every girl's best friend, but not one of them could even stomach the thought of dating him. And I also wonder why he has this problem. He happens to be my brother, and he's also 5'6". Could there be any correlation between height and the friend zone?
Of course, and of course, this is a very frustrating thing. I actually would suggest that, in general, what a person needs to do is to fish where the fish are. So I happen to be naturally very thin, so you won't catch me hanging around, a weightlifting competition or a bodybuilder competition trying to hit on the females. Okay, this wouldn't make any sense. I'm not sure where I should go. Chess competitions, where there's a lot of extremely attractive girls walking around chess competitions.
And ping pong, too.
So anyway, but the point is that obviously you have to fish where the fish are, and it's going to turn out that height is a significant parameter that doesn't get really anybody ruled out. Certainly not somebody 5'5". It gets them ruled out by an awful lot of people. So it's going to be the case that if you're 5'5", your market probably the overwhelming majority of your market is going to be women that are going to be 5 foot tall or 5'1". Now there's a lot of those people, and there's certainly women that are 4'11" too. There's very few women that are 4'10", but there are a few, and you are certainly in the market for those people. But there's an awful lot of people that are 5 foot tall, and there is a lot of women that are 5 foot tall that are going to be pretty fine with a guy that is 5'5", given all other parameters being appropriate in terms of her attractiveness, his build. You do what you can. There's an awful lot of men of the world that have a great deal of sex appeal because they have terrific shapes. In other words, they're muscular, etc. So they can make the case that way as best they can. If they wear a little facial hair, believe it or not, that's actually an advertisement for sexuality that turns out to be effective. So there are things that one can do, and when all else fails, learn how to play the guitar. That will work, okay? So yeah, of course, this is a frustrating problem. It's always a frustrating problem to be ruled out by most of the people that you would be interested in. You have to understand that this is, in fact, the case of almost everyone. This is not the case of people in the top 10 percentile, but it is the case of people. It is the life of most people that are below the 80th percentile. They are consistently frustrated and upset, and feel like they cannot manage to score someone who meets their minimum criteria, for whom they meet the minimum criteria. So this person is struggling with the same problem that everybody else is struggling with, only on one specific dimension that feels very frustrating and quote unfair. But the truth is that this is life. Life has I guarantee you, I could line up in no time, whoever this person is, I could line up 1,000 women that would be interested in being with this guy. It wouldn't take me very long. Okay. Now he might say, you know what, Doug? It just so turns out there's not a single one of those 1,000 women that I'd be interested in. Be like, well, such is life. Okay. So you have to do everything possible to actually get the 1,001st female that is in fact acceptable to you. Okay. So I have routinely. I don't believe I've ever had a client that couldn't get a market. It's if they paid attention to the parameters that they could control and they hustled, it turned out that they could absolutely get a market. Now, it may not be a market that they're interested in, but this is life. Okay, so this is not your fault that you feel this way. This is your genes telling you you've got to get the last nickel on the table. And if there's anything that I've seen in this life that is frustrating, both from myself personally and everybody else that I'm dealing with most of the time, is that people have to fight tooth and nail to get the magic 10%, to get the 10% more than they really do have coming to them. and to get that reflected on the other side in the other person, to actually make that thing work and have two people feel really excited about a situation, that is not an easy situation to engineer. And if you're going to engineer it, you better essentially be working very hard at all the parameters that you have control over, and do what you can to compete. Because believe me, your competitors are not at home whining. Well, actually, a bunch of them are, but unfortunately, not all of them are. Some of them are out there hustling and taking care of everything that they can take care of in order to put their best foot forward, and they may get the person that you couldn't have gotten while we were sleeping. All right?
So let's, if you want, we can brainstorm a little bit. Where would we find shorter women? If we say we were 5'5", 5'6", I mean, we definitely wouldn't find them on a basketball court, right?
No.
So
you find them all over Asia. The truth of the matter is that there are, that's why these dating sites have height as a parameter, and you can set those parameters, and you set that height for nobody that's above 5'1", and that's who it is that you write to, and you give it your best shot. And the truth is that the female brain is designed by nature to pretty well optimize a feeling of ideal ratio between her height and his height at 6 inches. Typically, it winds up being that the deal that gets struck is at about 5 inches. And so that a person 5'5" is absolutely in the market for a 5 foot tall individual or 5'1" individual. There's a lot of those people, and not all those people are going to be able to handle that. So, in fact, many of them might. In fact, 80% of the 5 foot tall girls may not be interested in someone that's 5'5". Okay, so or it could be 90%, but I guarantee you it's not 100%. They're walking around with a chip in their head that needs that 5 or 6 inch differential, and if they get it, they're going to be okay with it. And so that market exists, and that's the market you have to attack.
And then, do you recommend telling a girl when you're messaging her that you're 5'5" or 5'6", or is it something where you so she doesn't rule you out, you don't mention it, and I mean you don't lie about it, but you essentially demonstrate your character so that
I don't think so. I think you better. I think you better face it right away, and so that's I would certainly lie by an inch. Okay, so you might even lie by 2 inches. If she's 5 foot tall, she can't judge height that well. So if you show up with shoes with her a little bit high, and you're in good shape, and it turns out you're 5'5" and she's 5 foot tall, you just might meet criteria. Okay, so I wouldn't lie any more than that, though. Lie a little bit. Everybody's lying.
Definitely don't go to a carnival on your first date in one of those, things where the person gets to guess your height,
right.
for you to win a bear or something like that.
Yes. Oh, speaking of this, speaking of man and woman dynamics and hustling and et cetera, I have to fill in our listeners with what happened this week.
Ooh, I can't wait.
Oh, yeah. You're the guilty party. So just so that our listeners know, Nate G is a tall, dark, handsome, young buck. And so he comes to Las Vegas to a thing that I'm speaking at, and he and his friend, who's also a handsome young guy, I would say they walked in, but they more swaggered in. They swagger in the door. It's a weight loss seminar, so everybody's, over 40, almost, and struggling with their weight. And these are generally older people that are coming to a seminar to learn how to eat and lose weight, as they should. But of course, there's always a few young, beautiful ladies that are really interested in nutrition, and they're there. So of course, I see Nate and his friend Wayne, and I shake my hand. I say, "Listen, I got to run a quick errand. I'll be back in a couple minutes." I come back in 4 minutes, and Nate is seated next to a beautiful young blonde. It's like, wow, that didn't take long. Yeah, that just happened. That's like my cat sitting next to the goldfish bowl, and I walk in and I'm like, "What are you doing?"
Well,
what I want to know is I want to know sweet old lady you kicked out of that chair so you could sit next to that girl. That's what I want to watch the videotape of that lunch. All right. All right, let's go on.
That was a fun one.
Oh, and she had an Australian accent, no less.
Well, she was a very pleasant girl.
Yeah,
I had a great conversation
very
with her.
There you go.
Well,
okay.
Don't blame just me. Dr. Goldhammer is with me too, so we share a little bit of the blame. Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
All
right. Let's move on.
Okay. Our next question. So speaking of things that we can do to overcome this, I'm going to actually go to the last question, then we'll go to the next one next. So speaking of things that we can do to overcome these differences while dating, one of our listeners wants to know, Dr. Lisle, what types of fame existed during the Stone Age? Was there an analog to the modern phenomena of Hollywood celebrities? And then the follow-up question is, if you had a choice, how famous would you like to be in this?
Okay. The first question is, I have no doubt that there was a fame that folklore and a person's, I'm sure that these were their feats of physical strength and daring, et cetera, that were very important. The equivalent of athletic and war heroes. So I have no doubt that was a very big deal. And I'm sure that obviously had men taking big risks with respect to those kinds of situations. These would be fitness indicators, and therefore men willing to take tremendous risks for glorious and dangerous physical actions. That's a chip inside the human head to be willing to do it, and it's a chip inside the human head to admire it. And so, that's part of human natural history, obviously. We have awe and admiration, and women have sexual interest in men who do great daring deeds. So that, I'm sure, has a long history. Now, the other question was about me. Let's see. I actually couldn't tell you. I would say, in principle, you would idea would be enough fame to surround yourself with the people that you would really like to be in your life, and to secure excellent relationships with mates, friends, and trading partners. I think that's the amount of fame that any human being needs. And past that point, personally, I don't personally have any interest in fame past those parameters.
Mm-hmm.
That's me.
And I remember a long time ago in one of the shows, you mentioned that I think it was Phil Collins. Because he's up there and singing, he's not that attractive himself. But because he's out there, he might be able to. Because he's in front of so many people, he's essentially upping his odds to find someone that's extremely attractive. So if someone's not that attractive, or if they are attractive but they're just their height is 5'5", 5'6", like our previous listener was asking.
Right.
Does fame help to overcome that?
There's no question. And so this is a particularly probably something that is emotionally potent for a female, like music or possibly athletics, singing. I think music, even dancing, for goodness sakes. I think that these would be things. If I was 5'5" and I couldn't sing, I might be if I had some coordination, some athleticism, I might become one hell of a ballroom dancer. And I've seen guys that were 5'5", they're ballroom dancers, and they had people extremely interested in them because they're it puts you physically close to women, and it's an artistic process for women. They'd love to do this, etc. So this is like I said, you want enough fame to secure the relationships you would like, and the more obstacles you might have towards reaching to a market that you would be happy with, probably the more fame you need. That's how that would work.
That's really interesting. You said thing about ballroom dancing. It reminds me, a long time ago, I was dating this girl, and it was kind of in the beginning of our dating stages. So we went to a ballroom dancing class together. And, you know, as a guy, I'm thinking, oh, okay, good, I get to impress her, because I'd taken a couple of ballroom dancing classes when I was younger. So I get there, and they start teaching us, and the guys there, i.e. my competition, they have been dancing for a while, and they're shorter than me, but they just were blowing her away. They were amazing. And and I remember thinking to myself, I got to get out of here quick with her. So,
there you go.
And it was now that I understand that what they had a niche market, and they were just way better at it, and they overcame it. So
yes, there you go. I think that's a good strategy.
Yeah. All right. So, okay, Dr. Lisle, here is another question. Can you provide some advice on how both me and my partner could improve in the following situation? We're both in a decades long-term relationship, but my partner gets angry infrequently about how acquaintances treat him. He'll interpret what someone has said as an insult and then refuse to socialize with relatives or friends for periods of time. The worst of these relatives can be difficult to deal with in terms of making racial slurs towards whoever the latest immigrant group is that people complain about, and then they'll make occasional derogatory remarks about our plant-based diet and physically active lifestyle. I've already learned from your book, The Pleasure Trap, and videos that we may have offended people in the past by not only discussing but promoting our diet and lifestyle. So we've discontinued that, but we've done a lot of damage. Over time, my reaction when he's angry is to tell him that I'm not responding when he's that upset. But when he's no longer angry, he sometimes wonders why he's been so upset. We're both very introverted and don't have a large circle of friends, so I want to maintain the relationships that we currently have. Any advice?
Yeah, interesting. There's some things to learn here, and I would say the first thing that some things that I would this individual might benefit from actually understanding his own anger and understanding some basic problems that we could be walking into. So I'm not sure. These circumstances are obviously idiosyncratic to some degree to these people and these specific relationships. But more generically, this is the basic problem. Anger is the result of feeling that you've been treated unfairly. And the root of feelings of unfairness is generally the notion that you have not received you're not receiving esteem signals at the level that you believe that you deserve. So there's a conflict of opinion and a conflict of interest that you believe that you deserve more esteem than you are receiving. And this can happen. This is what this then does is it creates anger, which is signaling to the other individual that this is the case, that you are in fact not giving me the esteem that I deserve. And in fact, so that if that signal doesn't seem to work, then what happens is, in theory, an argument, which is whether they're having arguments or not, that's sort of what's taking place here. What arguments are is they are essentially disagreements about fairness, which are really disagreements about status. And you're going to see some interesting characteristics of the nature of humans during argument, and that is that they will attempt to interrupt. They will actually talk over each other so that the other person cannot really be heard. Their voices are going to get raised. They effectively are feeling aggressive and even physically aggressive. All of these things are meant to. There's probably a few processes that are being attempted here. I believe that what's happening is that, unbeknownst to them, they're playing to third parties. So if there's two people in an argument, even if they're the only people there, there's a mythical third person there. In the Stone Age, there always would have been a third person there, and there would have been probably 4, 5, and 6 people there. There would have been a few people there listening that effectively were going to adjudicate on this conflict. And so what happens is that when a person is angry, the people that are listening are not very interested. So they're just vaguely interested members of the village that are, somewhat close to these people that are having this argument. And so it is their job to sort of listen in and listen to both sides really quickly, but their interest in this is very slight, and they are not going to listen for very long. And so therefore, it would appear that the evolution of argument strategy is to go for the jugular. Essentially, be as ruthless and strategic as possible. Look as fair as you can while you are actually delivering a blow to the other person's credibility and their argument as fast as you can, and have no interest in being fair about it. And it's all about winning. And so as a result, when we interrupt people, it's also the notion of, I'm going to stop you from being able to make that argument I don't want them to hear. And I'll talk right over the top of them, and if necessary, so that they cannot actually, if I'm talking while you're talking, they can't hear what you're saying. And if I talk louder than you, my voice may eclipse your voice, and they may hear my argument. Also, it doesn't hurt if they know I'm very angry. They assume then and infer that I believe that I've been treated unfairly by you, and I'm actually on the attack. So all of these things, this is how human beings evolved. They didn't evolve to have conflicts of interest, be patiently and quietly figured out and sorted out and figure out whether or not where was there a misunderstanding. That's not how this thing evolved. This thing evolved to showboat and get ruthless and attack the other person's credibility as quickly as possible. So by understanding this, person gets angry and they get ruthless, and their behavior is not that admirable to this their partner that's observing it. And even to the point where once he's done, he can't even put his finger on why he was so worked up. But the reason why he was worked up is that he felt insulted. Okay? Now, if they have essentially poisoned the well with a lot of these relationships, sounds like some of these relationships may be marginal about whether they're worth having. And so, however, let's suppose that the relationship is worth having, but the well has been poisoned. Then we have to know that we actually want to have a conscious and strategic plan about when we go into interactions in these relationships. We have to be planning to figure out how to stroke these people in order to cause them to feel like we value them more than they thought. Because when you essentially have conflicts over status, what you have is you have what I'm going to call an esteem dynamic that's caught in a vicious cycle. So if you insult me, I'm going to insult you back, and then you're going to insult me more, and I'm going to try to insult you more. And so that is an angry, vicious cycle that's percolating under the surface. Whereas instead, if we shift the esteem dynamic to where it is that we are giving them positive feedback, then they're like, well, wait a second. The last thing I want to do is attack a person who's giving me positive feedback. So you have to be clever about how it is that you can give positive feedback that is credible. Okay? We have to ask questions, we have to give compliments, and we also have to use self-effacing remarks. These are the three ways that we can signal to other people that we value them and that we don't hold ourselves above them. If we do this, we're going to find that the esteem dynamic can shift in a good direction. And even though it feels like this is not something that goes easily for human nature, that's why career diplomats are rare. Okay, but because they manage to be able to do this, they've got the natural emotional stability and essentially they've got an agreeableness to them. They've got just a temperament. They can do this, and they do it quite naturally. But most of us don't have that, but we can learn it. And actually, if you learn it, you can be just about as good as a diplomat once you learn conceptually what needs to be done. So what needs to be done is you need to be planning to essentially give people positive feedback, and you have to be willing to be creative enough about it that it looks credible. So that's what you need to do. And if this person will do this, then they will actually change the gear from reverse to forward, with respect to any of these relationships. You can't do it overnight. They're not going to believe it, but you can do it subtly. You can essentially have a plan that this is what you're going to do. We're going to do it a little bit at a time and a little bit at a time. And over about half a dozen interactions over several months, you could actually get people to be thinking, well, now, wait a second. I kind of like that person. And then when they see you, it's more pleasant, and we've got a positive esteem dynamic. So you can go to my website, and you could listen to my 25 little clips there. And some of those clips talk about flood the circuit or how to get out of a jam, et cetera. These are all basically the same concept, and that is that you need to understand that when you're in trouble, the nature of an argument of any kind, whether it's long-standing or a short-term argument, is an esteem dynamic caught in a vicious cycle, and our job is actually to reverse it, and we can reverse it with conscious forethought and planning about how we do it, and then we're very likely to be successful.
Mm-hmm. And your website is esteemdynamics.org. And so if any listeners want to go there and look at those audio clips. And also you had a session with a listener a couple months ago called How to Repairing a Strained Relationship. And this is you discussed the vicious cycle versus virtuous cycle and how to shove the gear into reverse. Right. Right. Good. I forgot about that. That's really good. Yeah. Fantastic. All right. Well, Dr. Lisle, I think we've got all the questions for today. We're going to go over some more next week, and well, thank you very much. We really appreciate the questions from everybody. Again, don't be discouraged if I don't read your question right away. We have it all on a queue, and we just get to them as soon as we possibly can.